Tonight on Meet Your Double Feature, towering monsters collide over Tokyo in the Kaiju blockbuster Gamera, Guardian of the Universe. Then, soap opera star Celeste Talbert battles backstage egos and shocking personal secrets in the ensemble comedy Soapdish. It's an eclectic 90s double feature, and it starts right now.
All right, Frank, welcome back. Episode 3. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is an exciting day. As of recording, our first episode went live to the public today. You're not going to be hearing this one until sometime later, but very excited about that on our end. Anyway, we're ready to run it back. Of course, like last time, we talked about the 2 movies that we'll be discussing on today's show at the end of the previous episode, which hopefully you've heard by now. And Frank, we're going to kick things off with you today and your review of the film I recommended. Can you remind us of the title for that one?
This one is Gamera, the Guardian of the Universe.
Not to be confused with Guardian of the Galaxy, I assume.
I was thinking about that title-wise, but no, yeah. Gamera, he guards the universe, which is bigger than the galaxy, if I know space correctly.
That's true. This is a bigger deal. I assume we see him going to multiple planets.
We do not, but he's specifically guarding Tokyo, actually, is what he should be
not even
called.
the Earth.
Yeah,
no truth in advertising for Gamera.
No, he's just lazy.
Okay, well, to preempt the review in terms of why I selected this one for you to watch, if you listen to episode 2, you'll remember that I picked out the movie Grifters and it got a 3 out of 10. So I'm a bit in the hole on the overall scores for the season.
Yeah, Grifters was a bummer. It made me sad to watch it.
And not like an intentional bummer.
No,
it was unforced error. So I'm not doing great in that regard, so I wanted to pick one that I thought was more of a surefire hit. Gamera, to me, screams like, obviously, Godzilla movie, but a newer one, mid-90s, and hopefully with some connections to things we liked growing up, like Power Rangers, and I don't know, just impressive miniatures and sets and stuff like that. Stuff that would kind of appeal to you as a filmmaker on top of as a viewer. So curious to hear what you thought.
Yes, you were right on the money with this one. Gamera,
oh, really?
Yeah. Gamera is awesome.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah. It was, like I was saying, Grifters, I was just unhappy for mostly the entire runtime. Whereas Gamera was the complete opposite. Like, from the very beginning, I was just like, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted. It's like genuinely from like beginning to end, like this movie just jumps right into things in such a, I don't know, a good way. Like the pacing is excellent.
Is this I know it was sorry to interject, but I know this was a Japanese film. I assume you watched it, the subtitled version with the original audio?
Yes, that's actually a good question. I hadn't considered even, it didn't occur to me that there might be an English dub because I watched the Japanese version, but it did get a release in the U.S. I believe it was originally released in 1995 in Japan, and then the U.S. release was 1997.
Oh, still within the decade. Good. I almost broke a rule again.
Yeah, I was a little like, I almost thought, because there's a lot of Gamera films, and so like when I pulled it up, because I know when you pitched it to me, you told me it was the 1995 version, but then it was labeled as 1997. So I was like, oh, is this a different Gamera film with the same title possibly? Because like, sometimes like the Japanese title gets like, they'll just change the title for if it's an international release or something.
Oh yeah. I think even more so in like the 90s when things were less global, you had differing titles based on region. And I'm sure if Gamera is anything like Godzilla, there's probably like 25 of these movies, so I'm not surprised.
There is a lot. I mean, we should say, like you were mentioning earlier, like, obviously, both huge fans of Power Rangers. I remember us watching Power Rangers recently, and I was curious about just the genre itself, because, like, this film, Godzilla, or, like, Kaiju films, which is, like, its own specific genre of, like, traditionally, like, Japanese films. But very similar production elements to things like Power Rangers, and they both fall under the same, I guess, genre or production style. And I apologize if I am pronouncing it wrong, but it's tokusatsu.
That sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's more like the broader umbrella term that both of those things fall under, and it's essentially a type of special effects film.
Right. Because my memory, I mean, my understanding of these types of movies is usually that the Godzilla parts in question are a person in a giant suit interacting with like a miniaturized set, usually of either a city they can stomp around in or like just the mountainous countryside. So it's obvious it's not trying to fool you into thinking it's anything real, but it's been done in such a consistent way over the years in Japan that you always recognize anything from that genre because you're like, yeah, that's exactly it. It looks just like the Megazord.
It does, and that's kind of something I wanted to get into because, like you were saying, this is one of the newer Gamera films, and like just from a production standpoint, it's so interesting because it is literally that. Like, it's just a guy in a suit is Gamera, and so like,
see, that's awesome. I'm totally on board for that.
It is awesome, and I loved it, and I'll get into it a little more later. It led to some unintentionally just hilarious moments, in my opinion. But with the tokusatsu genre, just like kind of an interesting, I guess, production element is like it's specifically referring to special effects versus visual effects, which like visual effects would be like, you know, things people are familiar with like CG and stuff like that. Like the Hulk is like a visual effects character. Special effects refer to like in-camera effects.
Right. That was how I was going to try to summarize. The first one would be post-production, something done after you're done shooting. Special effects is, you know, trickery that you do while you're filming.
Yes, exactly. And so it just like this film, you know, it looks great. It was shot on film. Obviously, it's on location in 90s Tokyo, so it just has this like very nostalgic appeal to it just through the visuals. But it's just so interesting to me because like in some ways some of the effects seem so like unchanged from how they would have been from like the early kaiju films, which were, you know,
right.
From like, I don't remember when the original Godzilla came out, but it was probably like the 50s.
Well, yeah, because Godzilla for Japan has always been like a nuclear bomb allegory. And I think the earliest Godzilla films were not long after the end of World War II, so it probably was the 50s.
Oh, yeah, that's what Godzilla's always been. And there's some elements of that in this film as well, which I can get into. But yeah, just the fact that like this film, again, it was released in 1995, and there was a couple scenes, one in particular, that really were reminding me of like Jurassic Park. And
right.
It was just so interesting, and I guess really speaks to what a visual accomplishment Jurassic Park was at the time, and even still today, honestly. Just the level of, you know, production of that film versus this one. And of course, Jurassic Park used a combination of visual effects and special effects, like in camera. With like,
that's true. That might even be, you're talking about how kind of unabashed the style of production is in those Japanese films. Jurassic Park, when it did have to use practical effects, was trying to hide them as best it could. It shot those scenes at night or in the rain. It did as much as it could to never like revel in how obviously fake these elements were. Whereas I think some of these kaiju movies like don't care. They're like, yeah, it's a guy in a suit. Moving on.
Yeah, well, but you know, it does like a good. I guess like you could compare like a kaiju film. It's similar to like a horror film in some ways, where it's like you want to hold back on showing the monster as long as possible, you know, to kind of build up that suspense for the audience. So it does a good job of that in like the first act of the film. But from like the second act onward, it's like, yeah, no, we're getting full on wides and close-ups of dudes in suits like interacting with miniatures.
Godzillas will attack you in broad daylight. That is a recurring theme. Absolutely. They do not wait for cover of darkness. They are as big as a building.
No, but that is interestingly part of the story of this film, because I guess to get into that a little bit. So Gamera is our main kaiju monster of the film, but I think another kind of trend or trope within the kaiju genre, is there's usually like one kaiju versus another or multiple or something.
Oh, absolutely. It's your Kong versus Godzilla type stuff.
Totally. So he's essentially your good guy kaiju in this movie, and he's fighting Gaios, which is it's like a bird kaiju.
Okay.
But so the movie starts in an interesting way, because it's like again, it's like right away, like the movie starts and there's like this this ship, it's coming into port in Tokyo, and they're like, man, we got a lot of plutonium on this ship. It'd be pretty bad if something happened with all this plutonium. And then they're like, oh, we've like run aground. And they're like, what are you talking about? We're in the middle of the ocean. What can we run aground on? And they essentially like have like, kind of crashed up into like this floating island has like come underneath their ship. And so, again, they don't get into it right away. Like, the kind of cuts into them back in Tokyo, and they're like, we have to investigate this thing because this thing's moving and it's moving towards Tokyo. So, there's kind of some urgency there. And then we're also showing this like other story where there's these researchers on an island, and they're getting like attacked by some monster that we don't see off screen, which, at first I was like, wait, what is going on? Are we telling two different stories here? Is this the same monster?
Yeah.
But it was slowly revealed that it is two different things, like that the floating island is Gamera, and that on this other island we have these giant bird monsters that are like attacking people. And so that's like how it introduces like our human characters to the film, because one of the guys, I believe he's Japanese Navy or military of some kind, but he was on the ship that was carrying the plutonium. And so he sort of like feels personally responsible for investigating this floating island. And then on our B story, we have this woman who's like a bird scientist of some kind.
Oh my God. I thought you were about to just say she's a bird. And I was like, where's this movie going?
She's a person.
It's actually Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah. She's a person that like studies birds. And so like they take her to this island to be like, hey, we think we found a really big bird that's potentially eating people. And she's like, that's crazy. Let's go check that out. And so we kind of have these two parallel stories happening. But then eventually we see the bird kaiju start to attack people and eat people. And, they build up to it really well. They build up to the reveal of the bird really well. And then we still haven't seen Gamera at this point yet, but the military gets involved with this woman, and they're like, okay, we got to capture these birds because they're going to go around eating people in Tokyo. And so they have this just hilarious idea, because they're like, how are we going to, the military wants to capture them alive. So they're like, we can't just blast them out of the sky. We want to like capture these things and study them. And so they're like, how are we going to catch them? And so they decide to use like a baseball stadium with like a retractable dome,
Oh, okay. So it flies in, and then they just turn the ceiling off.
And then they close the ceiling on it is their plan, which is just like a fun scenario. It's a fun visual, that part of the movie where they're like trying to lure these birds in. But while they're doing this is like when our like kind of two plots collide, and the guy who has been like trying to, track down this floating island, he shows up to this stadium. I don't know how he finds his way there, but he finds his way to this like to the head of like the Japanese military or whoever's in charge of this operation, and he's like, yo, we got a situation. We got this island heading towards Tokyo, and he's like, whatever, bro, we're trying to capture some birds in a baseball stadium.
Like, one thing at a time.
Yeah, he's like, good luck with that Gamera or whatever, like, get out of here. But then like situation goes awry when they try and capture the birds in the stadium, and then that's when like Gamera shows up. He pops out of the water, and it's very familiar visuals. It's very much like the Dragon Zord from Power Rangers.
Oh gosh, I love the Dragon Zord. so much in that show because they would only ever use the same like 5 seconds of footage of it kind of slowly stepping out from underneath the ocean wave. And if they ever needed to explain that the Dragon Zord went home, rather than film it again, they just showed you that shot in reverse.
Show it in reverse.
As if the Dragon Zord wanted to just moonwalk back into the ocean.
That's what I'm saying, man. That is such an element of these Japanese productions, is that they're like low budget in an endearing way, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
It's like you said, they're not trying to like pretend to be anything else. It's like, we know what this is. This is what people want to see, actually. So this is how we're gonna do it. Because I mean, again, to compare this to like a you know, another film, I think it's Godzilla 2000. Is that the title of that film? The one with Matthew Broderick?
I think that one's still just called Godzilla.
But maybe it was released in the year 2000.
Right around there. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. It has like Hank Azaria in it for some reason.
Yes, exactly. It's, again, just to compare this film to that one when they came out so close together, and that was like a very like American take on like a kaiju film where it's so different. But this is honestly, this is the first scene that had me burst out laughing because like it's just like it's like he comes up out of the water and then one of the birds is trying to like it escapes the baseball stadium that they were trying to capture it in.
Bummer.
Yeah. Well, it's because the military messed up, man. You know, they didn't listen to scientist bird lady. She was trying to tell them what to do, and they wouldn't listen to her. But one of them gets out, and it's like, you know, it's flying towards the ocean, and that's when like Gamera pops up out of the water, and it's very, you know, he gets that like dramatic like slow motion, and it's just, you know, it's the essence of comedy when your brain expects one thing to happen and then something completely different happens. Because I thought Gamera was gonna like pop out and like it looked like they were setting him up to like come out and just like chomp on this thing and like bite it, but with the limitations of like the costumes or, you know, however they were filming it, like he just pops up out of the water and then swats it out of the sky, and I just like completely burst out laughing because it was just so funny. Like
That's pretty
visual.
good.
Yeah, he just like smacks it.
Yeah, because kaiju monsters, they're animals by design, but because it's a person, they always behave like a boxer up there. They don't use like animal tactics at all.
No, they're not like, yeah, they're not like clawing or biting. And I mean, like Gamera himself stands on his hind legs, like, and yeah, that like, so there was a lot of that. There was a lot of just like really unintentionally funny moments, but I think it enhanced the whole viewing experience, honestly, because it was just like that sort of unintentional comedy in there was great.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and then, you know, that essentially becomes the plot of the rest of the film is you know, Gamera is trying to fight these bird monsters, but, you know, the human military isn't sure. Like, they're just like, oh, well, they're both giant monsters. We should blow them both up, which again leads to some really unintentionally funny moments because, like, Gamera, he's like that meme where it's like, I'm just a really chill guy, you know? Like, Gamera's just, he's just like,
just happy to be here.
He's just like there. He's trying to help, you know? He's trying to like help the humans, but they keep blasting him with missiles.
This isn't, I know there's been a bunch of previous films with him in it, but they're treating it like this is the first time anyone has seen him, right?
Yes. There's no previous, as far as I can tell, continuity. They're very much like the way everyone reacts in the film. They're like, there's some monsters in Tokyo? That's pretty crazy, right? Like, what should we do? And so, yeah, there's just, again, this funny scenes where like Gamera, he's showing up to help and then they just start blasting him with missiles. And it's like, it is dramatic and you're supposed to feel bad for him, but it's like they keep cutting to these like close-ups of his face and he's like, ah. It's just like it's so like I just couldn't help but laugh.
Because from his perspective, he's been hiding out under the ocean for all of time, I guess, and he's like, uh-oh, Birdman's at it. I know what to do, and then just immediate rocket to the head.
Yes, exactly. It's like, why are they doing this to me? But you know, like I was mentioning earlier, like that, like you were saying with Godzilla as well, there is sort of an environmental messaging in the film, which I think is sort of a prevalent theme among most kaiju movies, given that they were all sort of born from that like kind of early Godzilla films, where they're talking about again the plutonium that they were traveling with, and the human characters are sort of trying to unravel this mystery of like, why is this happening? Why is this happening now? And they discover throughout the course of the film that both Gaios, the evil bird kaiju, and Gamera were created by like an ancient civilization, and like they made the bird, and then they couldn't control it, and it started destroying everything, so they made Gamera to fight it. And they were like, well, why did it come back now? And they're like, well, Gamera defeated it back in the day, but it had like laid these eggs, which again is like the Godzilla 2000 movie.
It's like almost every Godzilla movie. I've seen several that end with there always has to be continued for these movies. So the eggs and future monsters is a classic trope for them.
Totally. And that's what happens here too. And they're like, well, like, so they're like, why did these eggs hatch now? And it's like, well, because we're destroying the environment essentially. And like, this has we created an environment for these eggs to hatch in essentially. And I mean, I'm sure this is like, I don't know, I assume this is a real fact, but they're talking about plutonium in the film, and they're like, yeah, the half-life of plutonium is like 24,000 years or something. So they're like, we're creating something that's going to be on the Earth for that long. So I'm like, oh, well, that's depressing. But
bummer. Back to the big turtle.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, again, like you said, that's even how the movie ends. To fast forward a little bit, is Gamera defeats the giant bird monster, and they're like, well, we found those eggs that hatched here in Tokyo, but there could be other eggs somewhere else in the world. And, they're like, what if we don't have Gamera to help us stop them? And then there's one character that had sort of like a connection with Gamera, and she's like, no, he'll be back. Gamera will return in Avengers. Like,
yeah, and then he shows up in Avengers 2 and immediately gets shot with a rocket again. And he's like, come on, we went over this.
Just a really chill guy, Gamera, just trying to help.
How you can be mad at him? He's just a big turtle. Yeah. Lives on a floating island that's floating underwater.
He is a big turtle. He can fly too. Like there's like a special effect where like it was reminding me of like Squirtle from Pokemon, because he'll retract his head and his arms and legs into his shell, and then he'll start like shooting light out of all of those holes, and then like spinning in a circle like a UFO to like fly places.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, which is like exactly what like Squirtle would do in Pokemon. So I wonder if that was like, I assume Gamera came first, and that was sort of the inspiration for that visual. Yeah, and he could pull his legs in and then kind of have like jet packs basically like coming out from under his shell.
This all sounds awesome. I'm so on board already.
Yeah, it's just unabashedly is what it is. It's a kaiju film that aims to please in that regard. But like I said, it's like this one, from what I was reading, like I believe it was like the anniversary of the character. I think it was like the 30-year anniversary. So the original Gamera film was like 1965.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if he debuted as a Godzilla villain, or if he was always an offshoot good guy monster.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's such a large genre at this point. There's like, I think here in the US at least, people are very familiar with Kong and Godzilla. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole family of popular kaiju characters, and I think Gamera is one of the bigger ones. But yeah, like we were saying at the beginning, it's the title is he's Guardian of the Universe. So I don't know if there's like if his story is more expansive in other films.
Oh yeah, Gamera died on the way back to his home planet.
Right, exactly, spinning like a turtle.
That's interesting. I'm curious. From what I've seen, Japanese kaiju films, and mostly Godzilla films, they have a lot of human characters, but rather than focusing on human plot arcs, like emotional arcs, they're often very logistical. Like, you have characters with emotions, but they really hone in on, like, what is the monster doing? How do we defeat it? Whereas the American ones often have these plot elements that have to resolve almost independently of the crisis. Is this one more like in that Japanese style again, or is there like human melodrama on top of it?
The human characters are very much propelled throughout the whole story by what's going on with these monsters, but they are very likable. It's not like they detract from the story. You're not like, well, get back to the monsters. It does add that human element to it. And there's a lot of interesting things throughout the film too, where at one point there's sort of like a montage where they're just showing the effects that this is having. They're like, everybody's trying to escape, all the trains and planes are overloaded, and like the stock market is crashing, and like they're just showing all these effects on like just the general populace that this is having. But then we also have sort of our core characters that we're with, and there's one character in particular that I think I briefly mentioned before. She has like a connection with Gamera because our lead male character who was on the ship that found Gamera at the beginning, he found like essentially like a prayer bead that these were all over Gamera's back when they first found him floating in the ocean. And they were from essentially like the ancient society that created him. And he gives it to his friend in the film. He gives it to her daughter because at the beginning he doesn't think it's anything significant. But then with it, she's able to sort of form a connection with him. So like when Gamera gets hit by all these missiles, like she feels that pain too.
Oh no.
Yeah. And like when he's fighting the giant bird, like she's also feeling that pain. So it actually is like I've been watching a lot of Digimon recently. And so this also, it felt very Digimon to me, where it's like, she was always wanting like that, her family or like, you got to stay away. Like these giant monsters fighting. And she's like, no, I got to go help Gamera, and it's sort of like her, like, at one point, like, Gamera's down and out, and she's got to be like, come on, Gamera, get up, you can do it. Like, she's got to, like,
yeah. She's like pouring water on his head in the corner, and he's like,
yeah. He's like, cut me.
It's like, can you please Photoshop the Raging Bull poster, but with Gamera, Guardian of the Universe on it?
Yeah, and then they're shooting missiles at him still, like.
He's putting his boxing gloves on, he keeps getting hit with, like, mortars, and he's like, no! He agreed.
Leave me alone. Yeah. So so the human element is there, and it's like they're likable characters. They're interesting, and it's like they are sort of unraveling the mystery of why this is happening, and they are kind of working with the military to try and stop it. So it's very, like I was saying at the beginning, the pacing's just really good. It's like it's never like, doesn't really ever slow down from the beginning. I mean, it kind of gradually builds as the film goes on, but it's just interesting from the very beginning. The plot gets going right away, and you are kind of jumping between the perspectives of these different characters, and then also these giant monsters, and so it's just paced very well to kind of keep you entertained throughout. I was going to mention too, the score is really good.
Cool.
It punctuates a lot of the film. At times, it actually reminds me, like, I'd be interesting to kind of play them back to back in some way, but like, it reminds me of the score of Die Hard in some points throughout the film.
That's an interesting comparison.
It is, but I was like, but it's good. I mean that in a good way. It's just very, like, a lot of scenes are punctuated with very, like, those, like, kind of like heavy, like, string instruments, like, and so it just gives it a good energy. It just gives it a good energy throughout.
I mean, Die Hard would be in our 90s movie Hall of Fame, so anything that can draw comparison to that's a win.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Die Hard's possibly my favorite movie of all time. So
yes, and the music's a big part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like plot-wise, the movie kind of explains itself. It's not like we really need to get into spoilers, because it's like, I'm pretty sure Gamera's got this one, guys. But is this a movie that you would recommend without getting too much additional information, or is it something where I think reading more about it wouldn't necessarily spoil that experience? Because this is probably the first one that I've recommended to you where I'm like, I should probably watch this one when we're done.
Honestly, I don't think there's anything that could spoil the experience, because in a way, you know exactly what you're going to get going in, but I think you will still be pleasantly surprised by the execution. Because I think especially with this genre of film, a lot it really just does come down to the way it is executed. Because it's not trying to tell a very intricate story. It's a simple story, but like I was saying, it has sort of an environmental message behind it, as most of these films do. But it's just done in an interesting way, and I think in some ways it kind of even revitalized or possibly just broke new ground for the genre in Japan when it was released, because I was looking at some of the behind the scenes stuff, and it was like the first kaiju film in Kinema Jumpo, which is a very popular Japanese film magazine at the time, and it was in their top 10 best films that year, which was
that's cool.
So, yeah, so I think it kind of was a great, like, it's probably a really good place to start if you've never seen a kaiju film before, like, and you want to see like an authentic one, because like I said, I think a lot of American audiences are familiar with the ones we've seen here. Godzilla especially has gotten a lot of modern adaptations recently, but if you want to see that genuine, like, old school tokusatsu style Japanese film, then this is a great one to jump into, because I myself have not seen that many.
Well, and the ones I have seen that have made it over here in recent years did finally reach a point where, like, Godzilla is rendered with visual effects more so than special effects. So I wouldn't be surprised if this Gamera film is actually one of the last, like, really big ones that was made in the purely traditional style with the guy in the suit.
Yeah, that could be true. Again, that's like why I was comparing it to films released right around the same time, like the American Godzilla in 2000 and, like, Jurassic Park. Like, it seemed like this one, while it was almost like a return to form, but it was also like the pinnacle of that, like, style of production for these films.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a winner to me. I am overjoyed to finally be crawling out of the hole caused by John Cusack in 1990's The Grifters.
Me too.
Me too. We're gonna put those bad times behind us. We're moving on.
Yeah.
I guess one other question I had just from listening to you talk about this one that was on my mind kind of from the beginning is how Godzilla, as we said, was sort of an allegory for the devastation of nuclear war in the 1940s in Japan. But it seems like as those movies unfolded and we made some other characters, and especially several subsequent Godzillas, you obviously had to turn the monsters from being purely antagonists into eventually having good guy monsters, because they're the selling point of the whole movie, and obviously they're going to be super popular. But I'm curious how that changes, like, the thematic perspective, because Godzilla as an allegory for something, like a literalization of nuclear scares, it's almost like a toxic creature. But it seems like Gamera and some of these other films were trying to position it as nature as a devastating force that can be both good or bad. It's almost like you have to respect the power of nature, or else it can go south because of stuff like plutonium and, dangerous practices that turn it into a dangerous monster. I'm just curious how that reads in this movie.
Well, I mean, I think you nailed it right there. I think it's because there's, it's interesting. Like, something I kind of liked is when Gamera first shows up, like I said, he shows up and he swats that bird out of the sky.
He's got his boxing gloves on.
Yeah. At first, like, because the Japanese military is there, and he's just kind of walking towards the city, like, out of the water. And they're kind of like, well, what do we do? Like, people are like, well, shoot it. Like, shouldn't we just attack this thing? And, like, there's kind of some dialogue exchange where they're like, well, like, technically we're not allowed to, like, use military force unless it's in self-defense, essentially. And I think this is specifically referring to that they're like the Japanese Defense Force is this sort of organization that we're with. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I'm like, yeah, again, chill guy Gamera, he's just walking out of the water. He hasn't done anything.
He's just here to see the sights. He hasn't been in town in a while.
Yeah. But then, it's, again, that's where the confusion kind of sets in, because he's trying to stop the birds. So he walks into the city and then he starts smashing through buildings. And then they're like, oh, well, we got to shoot this guy. And then, it's kind of like it isn't until later in the film. There's a really interesting scene, and this is the one that reminded me of Jurassic Park the most in a good way. Is, it's just this kind of great shot where like there's this town is sort of evacuating because like the monsters are heading in, and one of our main characters, Bird Lady.
Bird Lady. She flaps her wings and she goes, caw.
Yeah. There was like a little kid who kind of got had fallen behind, and she picks him up.
Wretched thing.
She's disgusted by this human child. The Bird Lady picks up gross human baby and then is like she's like running across this bridge, and you get this great like shot. It's like a wide, because you don't see what she's running from yet. But then behind her, there's all these trees. And then, at the top of the screen, you just see the big bird kind of raise its head up, and like it's been chomping on something. So it's got like meat falling out of its mouth, and then it turns and it sees her running across the bridge, And I'm like, and then it starts to like chase her. And I'm like, this is very, Jurassic Park. This feels very familiar with like that kind of like big monster movie. And that is the scene where because then Gamera shows up. And again, another hilarious scene. I may have glossed over this before, but in the beginning, there's like a few birds, and then at the end of the film, he fights one giant one. So throughout the film, he's kind of fighting these smaller birds, but this one that's attacking them, Gamera just shoots a fireball at it, and this thing like explodes like a balloon. It was just hilarious the way it just blew up.
There's just like feathers falling down out of the sky afterwards.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's so like comical in a way. But that's the scene where the human characters realize that Gamera was there protecting them from the bird, because it kind of shoots like an energy blast at them, and he puts his hand in the way to block the human characters. And then, then that's where the kind of confusion comes in, where it's like the military is like, oh, well, they're both monsters, we got to blow them up. And then our protagonists are like, no, Gamera's on our side, So it's not like Gamera just shows up in a Superman cape. But there's very much that, like, kind of, like you said, I think it is about, like, respecting nature, because that is sort of the thematic message of the film. There's, like, we're destroying the environment, which has allowed this to happen, and Gamera is sort of, like, almost the will of nature that, we need to respect more and work alongside to sort of prevent us fracking up some giant bird monsters, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah, which is still in alignment with the original Godzilla metaphor, because that's still the same thing. It's essentially communicating that the man-made like monstrosity of nuclear war is the ultimate harm against nature, because it just destroys the land. So this is in keeping with that, but it's interesting that they pivoted that so you could have just a super chill turtle guy be your protagonist sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, he's great. This has made me a big fan of Gamera, honestly. Like, I think I always had a sort of passing interest in, like, kaiju films and, again, the genre at large. But after this movie, I'm like, yo, Gamera's my guy, man. They're just blasting that guy with missiles for no reason, and he's just trying to live his best life. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm sold. I think I was sold as soon as you said it kicked ass, because I'm like, well, yeah, I hope so. But we'll wait till the end for final scores. For now, why don't we? Do you want to check it over to the intermission, or do you have any closing thoughts on Gamera?
We can check it over. If I have anything else, I'll swing back around on it.
Okay. Well, we'll be back in a bit then with my review of 1991's Soapdish. Okay, coming back after the break, we are now ready for my review of, Frank, the movie you picked out, 1991's Soapdish. So you were telling me during the break that you don't even remember picking this one out. Do you recall why you recommended Soapdish?
It looked like, I don't know, it just looked interesting and funny. And it, from what I was reading, it looks like it's a very, like, behind the scenes look at, not in a realistic sense, but, behind the scenes of making a soap opera, which just sounded like a funny, I don't know, space to tell a story in. I don't think I've ever seen anything that tried to use that setting as a backdrop, so that seemed interesting to me. And the cast looked good, too.
Yeah, I do think you and I both, we watch enough movies that we've become fans of movies about making movies, and there's a number of examples of that, but I definitely haven't seen one prior that's making a daytime soap opera production. So that's an interesting place to start for this one.
Yeah, I feel like soap operas in general are like maybe a bygone thing at this point, but they're really just kind of interesting and funny to me.
I think there's probably still ones on the air, but they used to have more cultural relevance, despite the fact that by definition they're like extremely silly and inconsistent. I think when they're making soaps, like they're in production like year round. So they're writing scripts constantly and just doing every melodramatic thing they can think of. And this movie touches on that a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to pair this with like a kaiju movie because I feel like they both have very like I don't want to. I think I said low budget before for kaiju, but I mean like that's definitely like soaps have to do things very quickly and cheaply, and they'll usually only have like 3 or 4 sets that they rotate between.
Oh yeah, this movie gets into that for sure. I don't even really know where to start with Soapdish. It's a lot.
Oh, a lot in a good way or a bad way?
In a lot of ways. So the movie, as you pointed out, it's like an ensemble comedy. So it's a big cast of a lot of people who were well known in the 90s. I mean, just on the cover, it advertises Sally Field. She's the main character, who I think most people would know from either Steel Magnolias or as Forrest Gump's mom, right? That was her?
Yeah. I assume. Actually, I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm just going to agree with you.
Yeah, there you go. we'll just project confidence that she was in Forrest Gump, and we'll hope we're right.
Spread
so
that
Sally
rumor
Field's
on the internet.
What was that?
I just said we'll just spread that rumor on the internet if it's not true.
Did you guys know that Sally Field was in Forrest Gump? And everyone's like, yeah.
Have you seen Gamera? I think she's in that too.
She's the bird lady. No. So Sally Field is our main character. She is the star of a long-running daytime soap opera that's very successful. She has been on the show for like 20 years. She wins Best Actress at their version of the like Daytime Emmys every year, but she's about into her early 40s now and is essentially dealing with the fact that her own life is becoming even more melodramatic than that of the character she plays on screen. That's like the premise for Soapdish.
That's a good like tagline.
They sum it up really well. I swear like the last line of the movie is given to a news reporter who sums it up by saying like, life not only imitated art, it topped it. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the elevator pitch for the movie, I guess.
Okay, that's fun.
So Sally Field's the lead. Other cast, her main pairing in it is Kevin Kline, who I do like a lot. He's not actually done a ton of movies, especially not recently, but you've seen him in things, I assume.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I know who Kevin Kline is.
He won an Academy Award for a movie called A Fish Called Wanda a few years prior. That's maybe one of his larger film roles.
Oh, that I haven't seen, but
that one's good. Yeah. That one, a piece of unrelated trivia. If you watch A Fish Called Wanda, which is from the late 80s, they used a piece of score from that movie a couple years later in one of our favorites, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze. They just reused the score from A Fish Called Wanda. It's really weird.
Like literally, it's the same score?
It's the same. Like there's pieces of music that are directly repurposed for Ninja Turtles, which obviously we saw first and saw 1,000 times. So when you watch that movie, you're going to be like, this is bizarre. It's Ninja Turtles music.
Interesting.
So yeah, Sally Field is the lead. Kevin Kline is the other lead. Robert Downey Jr. gets top billing, or not top billing, but he's like front and center on the poster. And I'm trying to think of who else. Weirdly, a couple people get small roles in the movie and have almost nothing to do. Like she's not even on the cover, but Carrie Fisher is in this and has almost no lines.
Really? That's interesting.
I have no idea why. Elizabeth Shue is in it as well. She was from the original Karate Kid, a bunch of stuff in the 80s and 90s. So it's a fairly stacked cast. Whoopi Goldberg is in it, playing a character and not just playing Whoopi Goldberg, which is refreshing.
Hey, Whoopi's great on Star Trek. Okay, on Next Generation.
Oh, I forgot she's on Star Trek. Actually, that's so funny. I have a piece of trivia for later that connects this movie to a Star Trek movie.
Oh, good. Great.
Well, we'll save that for the end. That's a tease for later.
Yeah.
Okay, so Soapdish, its main driving force is that it's an ensemble comedy with a big cast that is doing essentially a satire about soap operas by trying to highlight all of the behind-the-scenes drama and theatrics that goes into making one. Because as I mentioned, Sally Field's character has been at the top of the charts for years. She's been the star of this show. And there are other women on the show who want to get her kicked off so that they can take on a larger role and get more acclaim and more money. That's like the driving force of the movie. But everything they do to try to make Sally Field look bad so that they can justify killing her character off makes her more popular to the point where it just completely undoes their scheme.
This is this is reminding me of Dr. Drake Ramore on Friends.
Yes, it's very much in line with the jokes about Joey playing Drake Ramore on Friends, because that's about as silly as this gets, because they're constantly doing stuff on the show. By the end of the movie, they're filming a live episode of the show and just going completely off script to talk about different things.
It's like where he doesn't want to fall in the elevator when he finds out his character is going to die.
Oh, absolutely. Part of the end of the movie is that some of the actors are so at odds with each other that they all want the others off the show, and they convince them that they're going to do a live script read for a live episode of the show where they don't know what their lines are until they come up on the teleprompter, and that's how they're going to find out who actually got fired.
Wow, that's hilarious. I like that.
Situationally, a lot of stuff in Soapdish should be very funny. I will say a lot of it is not very funny, and I think that's maybe the movie's biggest problem.
Supposed to be funny, isn't funny.
That's my thoughtful take on why this comedy movie maybe doesn't work, is it's not funny enough. It arguably isn't absurd enough. I don't think it leans heavily enough into this very satirical, goofy premise, because all the characters' motivations are silly. Some of them have kind of gotten the memo and are playing it up. Like Kevin Kline is fantastic. He's probably the only one who is pitch perfect with his performance, because he knows how absurd it is. He occasionally does these little physical comedy bits just in the middle of scenes that I like. But then, Robert Downey Jr., for example, is giving the flattest performance I've ever seen. And this is 90s RDJ, before he came back as a huge star with Iron Man, and he is not earning his paycheck with this one.
Well, yeah, that was a very troubled time for him personally, from what I remember.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not the only one where this was the case, but his performance maybe harms the movie the most, because he's a fairly important character, because he's playing the guy who created the whole show, and he's the one who's being pushed to make these changes so that they can justify killing off Sally Field's character. The whole plot with him is that this younger woman is trying to seduce him, but essentially won't sleep with him until they ensure that Sally Field's not on the show anymore. So he's kind of the one making these changes. He keeps trying to write in these increasingly absurd plots to make the audience dislike her. At one point, they're like, well, how do we make them dislike, Sally Field? She's America's sweetheart. And so he writes a plot where she kills a homeless person. And it's supposed to be everyone in the room is like, that's a bad idea. How are we supposed to justify that? But then it ends up not working, because the actress who comes in to play the homeless woman ends up being Elizabeth Shue. And we, the audience, find out in that moment that she's Sally Field's niece. And she's just been trying to get on the show in order to start her own career. And so Sally Field sees her and is like, oh my God, it's you. And they have this tender embrace. And because they were filming, they're just like, leave that in. The executives liked it.
Wow. I mean, that's, again, that on paper, seems like it could be really funny and absurdist, but if not handled the right way, seems like it could fall very flat.
Yeah, that's maybe the biggest hurdle I'm having in explaining my thoughts on it, is that some of these things are funny on paper, but in watching the movie, a lot of it just doesn't, there's not enough momentum to the jokes. This is something that should probably have a mile a minute comedy, given what the premise is, but instead it spends a lot of time on the actual character dynamics and the story, and I don't discredit it for that. There is emotional scenes between some of the characters, but that it's almost like they needed to pick a lane and go heavier into one or the other, because they could have done a more grounded satire, or they could have made a cartoon, and they kind of get stuck in the middle, where some people got the message to do one thing and some people got the other.
I mean, speaking of cartoon, it is kind of also reminding me of a few different things, but I'm thinking of BoJack Horseman, for example, which...
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen all of BoJack.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great example of that line that you just told me about, Sally Field's character kills a homeless woman. That sounds like something so absurdist and funny that it would be really entertaining, like BoJack Horseman. But then that show also balances that out really well with really heavy dramatic consequences for the characters.
Yeah, I think a tone akin to something like that show would have helped this more, where it's like acknowledging that these people are doing very bad things that have real consequences while still poking fun at it. Because part of Sally Field's arc, I, I guess I'm not afraid to spoil the movie because I don't recommend it, so I'm okay with getting into it a bit more. The main driving force of the story is that once Elizabeth Shue shows up and tells her aunt, Sally Field, that she wants to be an actor too, it's like the only human moment you get with Sally Field in the whole movie because she's mostly playing it like she's in the middle of like a Sunset Boulevard-esque decline in her mental health. And so when Shue shows up as her niece, she like softens immediately and is like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. Like, you're going to come stay with me. We're going to make this happen." And then at the same time, Kevin Kline's character, who we learned had a relationship with Sally Field, but she like got him kicked off the show and sent into obscurity. Robert Downey Jr. ends up finding him, down in the dumps and brings him back on the show in order to further mess with Sally Field and hopefully make her snap so that she can get kicked out. And then you find out that Elizabeth Shue, which I wrote down in my notes, I predicted this like 45 minutes before the movie says it, is not her niece, but is in fact her daughter that she had with Kevin Kline years prior. So they had a kid. She was told to like cover it up in order to keep her position on the show. So she pretended that the kid was her niece and sent it to live with her parents and then got Kevin Kline kicked out so that he wouldn't talk about it. He also didn't even know. So this all comes out in the second act, coincidentally, while they're still on set and still filming. And that's like where the drama starts to peak for them. It's like, wow, Sally Field did kind of a terrible thing where she hid from her daughter that she was her mom and hid from the father that he was the father. So it's kind of just a big mess up all around.
Oh, she didn't know either. The daughter didn't know.
The daughter did not know. And it was set up in the sense that Sally Field's like weirdly motherly towards her already. She talks about how she was always sending her letters when Elizabeth Shue was in college and was always checking in on her and sending her money. But Elizabeth Shue finds this out and gets super pissed and like kind of tries to split that relationship off. Kevin Kline is also pissed because he realizes that Sally Field really did can his career on purpose just to like cover the whole thing up. And again, that's like a BoJack Horseman level thing where you're like, yeah, that's a really bad thing you did. So we kind of lose any sort of sympathetic edge for Sally Field, who's already been hamming it up as this like ridiculous, actor character from the beginning. And so by the end, I'm like, I don't really care about the resolution anyway, because it's not, I don't feel like these characters deserve a clean resolution regardless. So I'm not going to be like rooting for this to work out emotionally, but it tries to play that part as if it is kind of like authentic. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it does. It does. And I mean, again, this is just, I feel like this is reminding me of, which is, why I recommend it in the first place. But there's other examples of this type of movie or story. Like I'm thinking of For Your Consideration is a great film that's, it's about these characters that are making a movie and like, by the end of that movie, you feel really bad for the main cast of characters. Whereas this seems like the opposite, where you're just like, well, these people all kind of suck anyway.
It's weird. Yeah, because when the movie starts, it looks like that's entirely the point. I mean, they joke at the beginning that Sally Field comes home from the awards show and wants to talk to her boyfriend. And there's a message on the machine from her boyfriend who's like, sorry, I decided to get back together with my wife and kids. And so she's crying to her friend Whoopi Goldberg, who's like a writer on the show, and throwing like a tantrum while also admitting that she was a homewrecker and like tried to steal this man away from his wife in the first place. So it's like, again, pick a lane. This should either be someone who is like comedically over emotional, but still someone you can root for, or she should be like horrible the whole time. And that should be the point.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, like, she's your POV character, it sounds like.
Yeah. You're following her pretty much the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems a little unbalanced. It sounds like she goes through a lot in this movie too. Like there's a lot going on with her character.
Is entirely the point. It's supposed to be like her life is as dramatic as the characters, and eventually it keeps getting captured on camera, and then it makes her more popular. Like the reveal that Elizabeth Shue is actually her and Kevin Kline's daughter gets captured, and the news finds out about it, but it makes the show's ratings go up, and it turns into this whole thing, which again is part of the irony. Like we're just playing with these people's emotions and capitalizing on that for ratings. But by the time you get to the ending, it all stems from this emotional angle of like, will she fix this relationship with her daughter and the father of her daughter? And why, like, I don't care, like I assume it shouldn't work.
Like, whatever, Sally Field.
Yeah, exactly. So that part was strange. Also, the movie does lose an entire point for me in the final scoring because right before the ending, we get hit with the titular 90s trans panic punchline, which was very unfortunate.
Like, right at the end? Or like
right at the end. So the character I mentioned, who's trying to get Sally Field fired, is just another actress on the show who's trying to boost her own career. She thinks that Sally Field's holding everybody down because she's so popular. So she's the one trying to force Robert Downey Jr. to make this happen by essentially flirting with him and saying, like, we can be together once you make this happen for me. And then in order to give that character a button at the end, they reveal that, quote, like, she's actually a man. And that's why she wouldn't let Robert Downey Jr. touch her. And then she just, like, there's, like, no follow-up. They're like, ha, gotcha. And then the movie's over.
Like, that's what the movie ends on? Like, this is the last scene? Or
there's a small falling action. Like, the end of the movie is the scene I mentioned where they put Sally Field, Kevin Kline, and Elizabeth Shue in a scene together where they're going to be reading their lines from the first time live on air to figure out who actually gets killed off and who gets to stay on the show. And that's where they end up having, like, a different conversation and kind of trying to, like, play this whole thing tongue-in-cheek so they can resolve their family drama, which causes this other character named Montana to blow up and show up and try to, like, make the whole thing happen so she can get Sally Field kicked out. And somebody runs on stage and is essentially like, we're going to foil your scheme, Montana, because you're actually a man named Milton. And she, like, runs away crying. And then there's seemingly, like, cut footage of how this resolves with Robert Downey Jr. because he does the thing where he's like, oh, no, I was attracted to a man. And it's like, no, you weren't. This was not framed as a scheme. It's as if this person just was presenting as a woman from this point onward. That's not a trick. Like, I don't know. I hated that part so much. But there's a small falling action that's just like everything worked out for the rest of the characters and they're all fine now.
Was this supposed to be like a comeuppance for Robert Downey Jr.'s character? Was he presented like a villain?
Yeah, he's essentially the bad guy too for going along with the whole scheme. He's constantly... Again, it's worse because he has this dialogue with Montana where he keeps saying, like, you know, I never try to date women like you who are so, like, bossy and mean to me. I don't understand why I'm so attracted to you. He keeps saying that. And then the reveal is it's like, it's not a woman at all. And you would think there'd be some sort of follow-up with that where, like, they got together anyway or something. But it's like, no, they have this, like, really brief interaction and then it just cuts away from it to wrap up the movie. I was like, what was this? What was this story even supposed to be at the end?
It's just an unfortunate product of the times. This movie seems to just not know what it was going for in a lot of ways.
Not at all. I'm going to guess it was too many people involved. Ensembles often falter under their own weight, I feel like, and this is another example. There's one that's really well regarded that you and I both did not like from the 90s called The Player. Do you remember The Player?
Oh, yeah, totally.
So that movie has a really famous opening because it's like a 10-minute continuous tracking shot. It's the kind of movies that inspired that current day Apple TV show, The Studio, which is another one about, like, the insides of Hollywood where, as you would expect, they kind of try to flex the whole idea by doing a lot of, like, colorful camera work and framing and stuff. They're playing with, like, film language while telling you a story about filmmaking. And this movie does that too. You know, there's not nothing going in its favor, and there are maybe one or two things that are actually funny. But man, what a downer of an ending.
Yeah, that stinks. I was actually going to bring up The Studio too, because, you know, like you were mentioning, there's a lot of, like, Hollywood loves to make movies about Hollywood, which makes sense because it's, you know, it's what these people know. But I think a common issue when those things don't land is not knowing, like, they all tend to have satirical elements and be critical of, you know, Hollywood and the whole, like, industry, but often don't know which way to, like, they don't fully commit one way or the other to that. Because I've even, you know, recently heard Seth Rogen talking about that show where he was like, you know, it was originally going to be a much different, like, tone and direction for the show. It was going to be more cynical in a way. But then they're like, oh, but then, you know, we saw the success of the Barbenheimer weekend, and that kind of revitalized us and how we wanted to tell the story.
Seems like people full of too many ideas. They want to tell a story about their experiences in the industry, but they just can't focus that into one idea.
Yeah, it's like they want to be critical of it, but they also want to celebrate it because it's something that they clearly are invested in and care about and live in their day-to-day.
Yeah, that's the Soapdish problem too. I mean, it's poking fun at the fact that these productions for these soap operas are very cutthroat and hurt a lot of people. But at the end, part of the payoff is like Elizabeth Shue wins the acting award that Sally Field usually wins. And it's like, oh, look, she made it. She's an actor now too. And it's like, really? That's the takeaway from all of this? Is good job. Let's all continue to work for this company that makes the show.
I feel like, I guess what I hoped it would have been when I picked it is because, like I was saying before, I'm like, it's fun that it's a soap opera specifically because there's so much inherent comedy potential there, I think. But also, I feel like it would have been a better film if it was like the people making it, like actually had somewhat of a reverence for soap operas, because it almost seems like the way that the story was being told was not in a way that like the filmmakers appreciated what soap operas were or what people like about them, I guess.
I agree. I think it was using it as a punchline. I don't know the backstory of if anyone who wrote the movie worked in soap operas or likes them, but it reads like they wanted to just talk about film and TV, but thought that soap operas was like a funnier setting. And some of that visually does land, but there's not the reverence that you would expect. It is fairly critical and kind of a takedown on how these operations work, but then just tries to give the characters some happy resolution. And I don't think you needed to do that. I think you could have ended this whole story in disaster, and that would have been funny if you had leaned into it hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential for this kind of movie. Like, it almost feels like there's been so many bad, like, video game movies, and when I watch those, I often feel like the people making the film like have never played a video game in their life, and it's just like it's like they saw like somebody's like rough notes of what this original concept was and then made the movie based off that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So overall, like I said, I was happy to spoil Soapdish because I do not recommend it. I think it has some individual deliveries or something that are funny. Like Carrie Fisher's very brief appearance is kind of funny because she's just a producer on the show. And so it cuts to her. You're watching her watch this guy do an audition for the show, and you're kind of seeing through the camera that she's standing behind. And it's just focused entirely on this guy's chest. And you find out that the line he's reading for is just like a waiter with one line in the whole episode where he's like, hey, can I get you anything else? And so she makes him read it a couple times, and then she pauses and she's like, do that again, but with your shirt off. And it's like, oh, okay, that's like a funny bit for Carrie Fisher that she's just trying to bring in hot guys to be on the show. Because then later somebody else walks by her office and there's like 30 people outside waiting to audition for this waiter role.
Oh, yeah, see, that's funny.
So it's like there's something to that. They do overplay that joke though, because then when the character walks into Carrie Fisher's office, you see that the other guys just walked out and Carrie Fisher's like putting all her clothes back on. And it's like, that's unnecessary. We already understood what the joke was. Like, that's kind of a hat on a hat.
Yeah, well, I wonder, I wonder if it's also they're trying to say something there too about it being sort of a gender swap of, a more like nefarious, like.
No, it's the same kind of like predatory relationship that where you would normally see it with like a man doing that to women. But yeah, so it's funny because it's an inverse, but it's crazy to me because Carrie Fisher's in that scene. And then she has one line in like another scene, but she's physically present in a lot of the movie and just doesn't have anything to say. And I don't know if all her scenes got cut or what, but it's very strange.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I wonder. I mean, if she's actually there, I wonder if she did just have a limited shooting schedule. She's not advertised on the poster for the film. She's just featured.
She's not. It's weird. I guess closing thought, because to wrap up the trivia that I mentioned. So you were talking about Star Trek briefly when we started. And I was reading in the IMDb trivia, this had very few upvotes, but I did verify that it appears to be correct. So in the movie Star Trek Insurrection, there is a brief bit where Picard goes back onto his ship and asks the computer to play music for him, and it starts playing classical music. And then he's like, no, give me something else. And it starts playing this like mambo music that he dances to. First off, does this sound familiar at all?
Unfortunately, yeah. Star Trek, the next gen movies are not good, but carry on.
Picard's dancing to this mambo music, and it turns out that the song they played is part of the original score from Soapdish.
The mambo music is?
Yeah, it's a song called, hold on, I wrote it down, Makeover Mambo, which is part of the score for this movie, composed by Alan Silvestri, and they just repurposed it for that brief scene in Star Trek Insurrection.
That's kind of great, actually. That's probably the farthest reach of Soapdish. That'll probably be like the piece of the film that has the most longevity because it's part of Star Trek.
Way more people have probably heard that song in Star Trek than they have in Soapdish, and I just find that very funny.
Yeah, that is really interesting, actually. This is almost entirely unrelated, but sort of similar. I just saw a cool video the other day that the song Faint by Linkin Park, the sample at the beginning of that song is from a Sean Connery 007 movie, and it was like a video breaking down how they, like, Mike Shinoda kind of took this score from that film and then like workshopped it until it became the intro to Faint, which is a great song.
That's fascinating. I do like hearing about, I don't know anything about music production. Like, I like music a lot, but compared to what I understand about filmmaking, I don't know anything about how music gets made. So that stuff's fascinating.
Oh yeah, me too. Very unfamiliar, but I am a fan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So long story short, go watch Sean Connery as James Bond.
Yeah.
Now, long story short, do not watch Soapdish. Not very good. I think it arguably has potential because the premise sounds funny on paper, but it just did not know what it was. And I think that there's a reason that people don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we've brought up several examples of much better versions of this type of film or
exactly.
story.
It's the same thing done repeatedly, even very recently. I mean, The Studio, that's brand new. That's nominated for Emmys like this year. So if you want to see something like that, just go watch The Studio or literally anything else. There's a movie called Hail Caesar that does this for movie production that, again, is fairly good.
30 Rock is probably a close comparison.
30 Rock's a good one. Yep. So anyway, don't watch Soapdish. Do watch Gamera.
Yeah, do watch Gamera.
All right, so Frank, moving into final scores. I think we know in advance who's going to win the episode, but why don't we give some final wrap up and thoughts first with you for was it Gamera?
I was asking this before the episode was rolling. I believe it's Gamera, like camera.
Camera with a C.
Yes.
Or G.
Well, yeah. Gamera. Gamera.
I don't know why that was so funny. Gamera.
It's fun to say. He's just a chill guy.
Yeah. He's just a chill guy. He's just happy to be here.
Yeah. He's not happy to be here, actually.
Well, no. He thought he was going to be happy to be here, and then he got hit with several hundred missiles. And he was like, you know what? I'm going home.
No, so Gamera is, I think, the show's first 10 out of 10.
Oh my gosh. 10 out of 10? That's awesome. I need a sound effect for that.
Yeah. It just, like, succeeded in everything it set out to do, which I feel like is everything you could hope for and ask for from a movie like that. And I just, these scores are just based on our personal experience, not like, I don't know, any other criteria, I guess. But I was just entertained from beginning to end. I had no notes for Gamera.
No notes. Other than be nicer to Gamera.
No, that was hilarious. That was one of the best parts, was that they bullied him. That's what...
He's your friendly neighborhood monster. Get out of here, monster.
Which is mean, and it was supposed to be sad in the movie, but it's just visually really funny. And it endeared him to me quite a bit. So that was maybe one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm so excited. I said last week I needed to rebound after Grifters got a 3 out of 10, and I can't believe I actually succeeded. That's very exciting.
Yeah, you had to go deep in the bag, pull out Gamera.
Deep in the bag. That was a home run. Soapdish, not a home run. Gotta say. Not your fault. I would have picked it too, because I think it looks interesting on paper, but gosh. I was gonna give it a 4 out of 10. That was where I was leaning. It's fine. It's inoffensive, but it definitely has a lot of visible flaws. But again, that stupid 90s trans panic ending was such a weak punchline, and it made no sense. And wasn't even explained away by it actually being a scheme. It's not like the character said, I'm actually a man, I was here to betray you. They were just trying to live their best life, and they got humiliated for it in a way that I thought was really mean. So Soapdish loses a whole point for that and is going to get a 3 out of 10 as its final score.
Ooh, just like Grifters.
Oh, it is just like Grifters. I swear this is not revenge scoring for Grifters. It's just actually that bad.
No. It's honor system on scoring. Very,
absolutely.
Very genuine with the scores.
Now, what's amusing... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Soapdish didn't sound good at all. So, and yeah, that ending bit also just sounds very, like, just going to leave a gross taste in your mouth at the end of the movie.
Yeah. The way something ends is important, and I think that you couldn't have had a worse ending. And it's not the only movie. I mean, like, Ace Ventura has a weird transpanic ending, too. It didn't only affect bad movies.
That's what I was saying.
It sucks.
It's a very prevalent thing in the 90s, unfortunately.
Very unfortunate. Yeah. I'm glad we've avoided it up until now, because it sucked.
Yeah.
I will say, again, very unintentional, but at the end of last week, in the season 1 totals, you were way ahead. But things have turned around so completely that we are now completely tied through 3 episodes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because the movies I'd given to you had a combined score of 9 over 2 episodes, but with the 10 out of 10 for Gamera, I'm now at 19. And you had 16 points, but with the 3 points added for your selection of Soapdish, you were also at 19 points.
That's funny how numbers work.
It is. It makes the show seem really fair.
That was unintentional, too. We were not trying to aim for a tie.
No, but that, I think that proves our point. We're not only making safe choices. I think even my pick for next time isn't going to be a safe pick, but we're actually trying to help find movies that neither one has seen and find some hidden gems. And sometimes you get a Gamera, and sometimes you get a Soapdish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just, like, I don't know. Like, yeah, let's get weird with it, too. Like, show me something different that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm excited because this means that I have won episode 3. You won the first 2. And we can't take that away from you, but I definitely won this time.
That's true. Yeah.
And what that means, as we move into our selections for the next episode, is that I get to go first.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting the rules, but go ahead.
Whatever you say, boss.
Sure.
Actually, that now means you owe me $40.
All right. Well, those are the rules.
Awesome. Well, I already have my pick ready for episode 4. You're going to be watching 1998's Soldier.
Oh, okay. 98 Soldier. Who's the lead?
So I've pulled an opposite of my I don't like any John Cusack movies, and I'm recommending you a Kurt Russell movie.
Wow. Sold.
So yeah, exactly, right? I mean, it's the exact opposite. I don't think I've ever completely disliked a movie with Kurt Russell as the lead, but this will test that theory because the movie has an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes.
You know what?
So it's kind of the reverse Cusack. The other thing that made me think it might appeal to you, first off, I thought this whole show is going to be us picking out like silly 90s action movies, and we've not really done that. But this one is a straight up like action sci-fi film, and the director is Paul W.S. Anderson, who you would know because he made most of the Resident Evil movies.
Oh, yes. I'm sold. I'm going to go watch this right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I thought you might like this one. So apparently people didn't like it. As always, there was some random threads online of people saying it was their favorite thing ever. But I'm just hard-pressed to think that Kurt Russell can deliver a bad enough performance to not somewhat salvage this movie.
I'm going to make a prediction right now that if it's bad, it's not his fault. It's not.
It's not your fault, Kurt.
It's not you, man. It's
not you, it's me. Or them. Somebody.
Somebody else. Anybody but you. He's just it's one of my favorite leading men, especially from that era.
Yeah, maybe John Cusack pops up in the movie and tanks the whole thing. It's probably not Kurt.
Yeah. Maybe he was on set one day and it's all his fault it was bad. Who knows?
He's like, I have an idea. Instant 18 out of 100. All right, so yeah, that's for you. 1998's Soldier. What is your selection for our next episode?
Well, it's a good thing, or I guess it's funny, you should say, we have stayed away from goofy 90s action movies because my pick for you is something that just, again, looks really entertaining to me. It's 1991's Double Impact, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, is he playing twins?
Oh, yeah. There's two of him on the cover.
Awesome. That's so funny. I think they should have really leaned into it and claimed that it was a different actor named like Damn Van Jean-Claude or something.
Dude, for an embarrassingly long time when I was younger, I saw the Parent Trap. Lindsay Lohan's Parent Trap.
Parent Trap.
And
Okay.
I thought that was two different girls. I thought that was two different people.
Two different Lohans.
Two different Lohans.
I mean, it's not. I'll be honest. I was expecting something much worse. I thought you were going to say like I thought Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't real. That's just a perfectly reasonable idea. They put two of her on screen. Of course, there's two.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy. Awesome. Okay, double impact. I'm excited. I think we keep, without coordinating this, picking movies that are somewhat similar, except for this time when we picked a soap opera satire and a kaiju film. This was the exception. So next week it'll be an action-packed double feature.
Yeah, totally. I'm surprised. I think it shows a lot of restraint on our part that we waited until episode 4 to get into this.
I thought this was going to be the whole thing, which is like, look at this goofy action movie that I found. Yeah, we've been really like, I don't know, scholarly about it and trying to be like, no, I like this interesting indie drama. And it's like, no, I want action and explosions, please.
2 Jean-Claude Van Dammes.
2 Jean-Claude. What could be better? 3 Jean-Claude. No, that's too many.
That's too many. That would be silly.
What are we going to call him? Damn Van... Damn.
Just damn.
Thank you for listening to our show. As a reminder, you can now follow us on Instagram at Meet Your Double Feature or on Blue Sky at MYDF_pod. If you enjoyed tonight's show, please consider giving it a rating or sharing it with a friend on whichever platform you use. Also, for information about upcoming screenings of Nate and Mariah in Venice, the film that Frank co-produced, please visit sardonicmp.com, which is linked in the description for this episode. The next screening is at the Richmond International Film Festival beginning on September 23rd. The nice thing about this one is that it is in the digital category, so no matter where you live, you'll have a chance to buy tickets to see the film. Again, screening information available at sardonicmp.com. That's all for now. We'll be back in 2 weeks with our next episode. Until then, thanks for listening.
Coming up next, it's Double Impact, followed by Soldier on Meet Your Double Feature.